I got really energized by Star Wars. In fact, I quit my job as a truck driver and said, well, if I'm going to do this, I better get going.
Here's where the fun begins.
I basically said to my producer, I don't know what we're doing. This guy's making Star Wars. I'm not even in the same universe. I'm not even in the same century.
Going to Star Wars was one of the most exciting experiences that I ever had in my life. Not just movies, but just in my life at that time.
The Force is strong with him.
Anybody that knows me knows that my life was changed at that moment.
For a generation of film fans, the release of Star Wars was an event of epic proportions.
First time I saw Star Wars was opening day at the Grauman's Chinese Theater.
The Chinese was the best place to go because it's a big screen then.
That weekend, it hit, and it was the thing to do. And our friend surprisingly said, let's go see it now.
Well, I'm one of those lucky generation that saw Star Wars at the perfect age. I was 16 years old.
I was a 9-year-old little boy living in South Central LA.
I believe I was 14 years old, and I took the bus into Hollywood.
And it was jam-packed.
We stood in long line.
We stood in line for like what seemed to be like forever.
I was the 9th person in line, and I was by myself. And then some friends showed up later, and then they cut into line with me, which kind of pissed me off because I'd been waiting.
I didn't know what it was all about, you know, while we were standing in line.
And I had heard rumblings about it, but nothing specific, really.
Somehow you just knew that it was going to be a very special film. I'm not exactly sure how we knew that.
The anticipation, this place was rocking.
When we finally got in the theater and the lights went down, you know, I was getting impatient. And then the movie started, you know. The Fox logo came up and the title went off. And the first things I saw were a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. And then boom.
When that crawl came up, that was a surprise, and you could just feel the excitement of the crowd.
And then the first scene comes in, and the rebel ship goes by.
I cheered, the audience cheered, and I thought, this is great. And then the spaceship that was chasing it came out.
And the Imperial Star Cruiser is chasing out the rebel ship, and you see the planet in the distance.
And it just kept going and going and going.
And went on and on. I mean, that's when you felt the audience's excitement start to rise the longer that was passing overhead.
And by the time that thing passed overhead, the audience was freaking out. I was freaking out, and I knew what I wanted to do for the rest of my life.
As audiences emerged from theaters around the world, they brought with them a realization that cinema had been fundamentally changed.
And when we came out, I thought, well, that is incredible. That's a whole nother kind of movie that has now been invented.
Star Wars smashed open the possibilities of what film could actually do. It was like a seismic shift in how people perceived the cinema-going experience. Not only did it have a powerful themes and stories that could resonate, but it was executed in a way that was so much more believable and so much more exhilarating than anything that we'd seen before.
It changed my life totally. I was like, I think I saw it from that moment on nearly once a week.
It wasn't just that I hadn't seen effects like that, but it was so funny.
We're all fine here now, thank you. How are you?
And so fast. So exhilarating.
And for aspiring filmmakers, it opened the door to a new world.
It legitimized the way we were and who we were, and the fact that I could go home from school in the evenings and make spaceships out of cardboard tubes and model kits.
And everybody like joked in film school about me because everybody was like Wim Wenders and Fassbinder and stuff. And for me, it was like, I kind of couldn't stop talking about Star Wars.
I was kind of stunned. I was depressed, actually.
So I was like, damn it. Somebody else did it. But at the same time, it was like, yes, it's possible.
Perhaps most importantly, Star Wars introduced cinematic techniques and innovations that would change filmmaking for the better in years to come.
There were 2 or 3 key innovations. One, motion, incredibly dynamic. You know, George is an editor, he thinks in cuts. And that film took the stunning kind of sense of detail and the starkness of space that you saw in 2001 and just kicked it into high gear, just turbocharged it, where everything was moving and crossing, and there was huge scale and tremendous depth to the shots.
He said, I am going to put this together in a way that you've never seen it. And it did. That's why it blew people's minds.
And the technological innovations that went into moving those ships and creating that kineticism, you know, the motion control that made that possible, you know, that was a major milestone in visual effects history that everyone acknowledges.
It redefined for me the way I think about science fiction, the way I think about fantasy, the way I think about how special effects can be used in storytelling.
Another of the film's key innovations was the concept Lucas called the used future.
Up until then, all science fiction, everything looked like it had been made the day before and just delivered, and you imagined all these spaceships having that kind of new car smell.
Everything was pristine and stainless steel and perfect.
And now all of a sudden there was a future that looked like people had lived there for a long time.
What a piece of junk. She may not look like much, but she's got it where it counts, kid.
It was the first time I'd ever seen science fiction or fantasy presented in that way, that everything was beaten up and dirty and oily and greasy and grimy, and you just believed in it.
Would it help if I got out and pushed?
Because if you believe in the world, you're going to believe in the characters and the emotions and the story.
He made the impossible real. And within the context of that fantasy, he said people still have to wash behind their ears at night.
There was a textural reality to it, and that was breathtaking. No one had seen that before.
And that was another wonderful touch. Influenced me when I did Alien. I thought I'd better push it a bit further and make them like truck drivers.
It certainly affected us. I mean, Lord of the Rings has an ethos which is very much based on that of Star Wars, which is make the world believable, have everything a bit dirty, have everything a little bit run down and worn down, because that realism is just the first building block towards creating a connection with the characters.
The company George Lucas founded to make the special effects for Star Wars created a new standard for realism in visual effects.
ILM was spawned out of Star Wars, and Star Wars was such a huge earthquake in the visual effects business.
A big part of it is the miniatures were so detailed. You know, we just weren't used to seeing that. He would create a whole new idea of what can be built and where it exists and what is the relationship in size between a ship and that space.
I'd read in the magazines that the Star Wars effects guy had taken bits of plastic model kits and glued them on to provide some of that detail on the surface of the spaceships.
There were more innovations to come. In the years after Star Wars, ILM put a new palette of storytelling tools into the hands of filmmakers, allowing director Barry Levinson to bring his stained glass knight to life in Young Sherlock Holmes, giving Ron Howard the ability to create the morphing sequence in Willow, making a mining car fly in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom.
There are so many ways in which ILM has moved the ball downfield and really kind of set the bar higher for all the other companies as well.
Bud?
On the Abyss, that sequence, the pseudopod sequence, it was such an iffy thing. No one had really incorporated a CG character, let's say, into a photorealistic film in that way.
Like a stone dropped into a pond, the ripples of George Lucas's innovation continue to be felt in a series of breakthroughs that have expanded the boundaries of what is possible in cinema, giving an entire generation of filmmakers the ability to make their dreams real.
We were certainly pushing the envelope on Titanic in a number of small incremental ways.
You have to stay on the ship as long as possible, come on!
There were a few big shots of the ship sinking that were incredibly complex, and I wanted to give it to a company that I knew I could trust, and so they went to ILM. We've reached a point collectively where the only limitation is your imagination.
Get out.
And that's a unique thing, because that condition hasn't really existed before in the history of filmmaking.
ILM has given a tremendous gift to the world, and especially to the world of filmmaking and filmmakers. They have freed our imaginations, and they have allowed us to dream and be guaranteed that our dreams will come true on the screen.
Going beyond the world of visual effects, Lucasfilm became an innovator in motion picture sound and editing, creating the Edit Droid, which led to revolutionary changes in film editing and was a precursor to the nonlinear editing systems in use today.
The Edit Droid was one of the pioneering works. Lucasfilm really was the only place at that time willing to take a risk. And George did take the risk.
That risk paid off handsomely for filmmakers around the world, who who have used the tools pioneered by Lucasfilm to create a new era of cinematic achievement.
It came from George just feeling somehow the technology ought to make our film-going experience be better. He always conveyed a sense of owing something to his industry. His charter wasn't say, go out and make a product and we're going to form a company to sell this product. It was, let's make something which is good for the filmmaking.
Along the way, Lucas created a computer division which was later sold and became the award-winning company Pixar, creators of films like Finding Nemo.
He had gathered together the most amazing researchers and scientists and computer programmers, and everybody. It was just the cream of the cream. And their whole focus was developing a system that you could animate objects and characters with the computer.
Just as Star Wars is the story of freedom from enslavement, it's remarkable in the way that George Lucas was able to not be enslaved to studios following Star Wars. And that spirit of independence and the value of independence has allowed the technology of film to move forward because of all the investments that George Lucas has made in digital sound and digital editing and digital photography and digital effects. And all of us who are making films today are benefiting from that.
Armed with revolutionary digital tools, today's filmmakers continue to push the medium forward. Yet none of them can forget the film that opened the door, pointing the way to their cinematic future.
Star Wars is really what inspired me to want to make the kind of films that we've pursued.
Turned me around 180 degrees as to what I felt I ought to be doing. And what's interesting is that the next film I made was Alien.
They actually gave me a big sort of kick up the backside to get going as a filmmaker.
I think when Star Wars would come out this year, when nobody knew about it, and it would be exactly the same film, it would be the biggest hit of all time.
It was the perfect film to inspire a sense of wonder and a sense of enthusiasm about being a filmmaker.
I told you I'd make it someday.
May the Force be with you.
Star Wars was the first time really that I'd had a concept that filmmakers, i.e. George Lucas, were shy, retiring types of people. The types of kids that didn't have girlfriends and weren't picked for the sports team. And this was like me, you know, I was living thousands of miles away, but I could recognize so much of myself and what I was reading about this guy who made Star Wars, George Lucas. I mean, the media were full of how shy and quiet he was, and yet it gave all of us who felt we were very similar, it gave us a lot of hope that we could persevere and achieve the sort of things that he achieved.